So this is the basics of the HCH Coreholder here. This is it all disassembled. This is your fixed end stem right here. This will go on the right side here. Your sleeve, this will be our sample for today. And then this is going to be the floating distribution plug on the other end. So essentially this can slide back and forth depending on the length of your actual sample itself. So I think you can do 0 to 6 inches with this type of core holder. There's all different kinds between 0 and 3, 0 and 12, 0 and 24, but this one is 0 to 6. If we look on the actual inside of the core holder, it is completely hollow. If you look closely, we will be coming in with overburden fluid here at the bottom and then purging through the top. That'll be our vent at the top. And we'll show you in a second that vent. But we have two setups here on the Nano permeability meter. Essentially the two setups on the Nano, this is a really long test. It allows you to do 2 different samples at the same time. So you're always gonna start with your fixed end. Make sure all your O-rings and your backup rings are clean or new, depending on your test. This is a long test, so you wanna make sure all these are new and greased at the time. Make sure your sleeve doesn't have any damage on it or anything like that. And the first thing you're gonna do, this is going to be the entire setup without the sleeve. It would look something like this. You wanna make sure you don't have any gaps with your sample and your end plugs. If there's a gap at all and you start putting overburden fluid, it's gonna damage your sample. It's gonna break through essentially right here on one of these two ends. That's probably the most common thing you see, is you'll see damage right here. That sleeve will actually break. So take our end plug, our sleeve, put it together, make sure it comes down to the end. You'll take your actual sample. This is just a metal billet right now that we have for kind of known permeability. We're gonna put that down there. Same thing, you wanna make sure it goes all the way to the end. If there's any gap right here, when that starts to squeeze, it'll break through and damage your sleeve and ruin your test and your sample. You'll take this end, put it on this end here. With the Nano permeability, you should be able to do this by hand. You can use a type of like metal plug in here, but this one, being the smaller of the versions, it should be able to do it by hand, but maybe not. Nope. That backup ring, it's gonna make it much tougher to tighten. So once this gets down and it's buried all the way down, we have it locked in, you wanna kinda come back a little bit and make sure this is loose. What's actually holding the pressure, the overburden pressure, is gonna be the O-ring and the backup ring right here, not the actual threads. So the threads being buried down is not really a good thing. And then with this system, we don't have heat, so you don't have to worry about expansion or anything like that. But if you do bury this down on a different core holder and then you heat it up, there's a good chance you won't be able to get this back off. So we kind of keep it loose just to keep it from seizing up. Once we have this end in, you're gonna take your floating end. I always recommend you're going to want to push this down all the way. So we wanna make sure this makes contact with the actual sample. So we wanna push this in first. You're gonna look through and make sure you get it all the way down, but you really don't want to bend the actual tubing here. Once you start bending this tubing, it's not gonna wanna freely float in here. So that's a big thing too. We wanna make sure we don't get it in there and it bends or kinks or something like that. We wanna keep it straight. Also, this nut at the end should be a little loose. This also, a lot of people like to tighten this. That just tightens for this. If you tighten this way down, this won't go down. So you wanna keep it a little loose. You don't want it all the way loose because it'll leak, but it doesn't have to be super tight. People make that mistake too. They wanna tighten this down all the way. You don't have to tighten it. Anyways, also if you have your fitting down here, you wanna make sure that this is tight too first. Make sure you don't have any gaps there. Then we're gonna tighten this side down. Again, you loosen this end up a little bit. And then the last thing you do again, push this in without bending this, but push it in to make sure you've actually closed up all the ends. This type of setup, we have 2 core holders, so we're just gonna be using these 2 valves as our overburden. So you can read this, we're gonna go 2 overburden pump, and then to vent overburden. So on the interpack pump, if you open this and you pump, nothing will actually build any pressure. This has to be closed to actually build pressure. So we're gonna close this, tighten this up all the way. These do tend to leak eventually, so normally we'll close a valve on the actual system to lock this out. Another thing too, when you look at this cap here, you wanna kind of always keep this at least on vent, or you can just keep it off. If you take it off, you won't have any pressure that comes back, and actually you could blow this part of this up. So you could just leave this off, or on vent to keep it safe so you don't have any blowback here. Okay, so we have vent. We're gonna actually pump fluid up through the bottom here. It's gonna build up, purge all the air out, and it's gonna come out over here. We'll have oil come out of here. Depending on the length of the sample and the actual overburden, this might take longer than others. And once we actually see fluid coming out down here, you'll actually see, we know that all the air is coming out now. So we're actually going to go to pressurize, which actually closes. So now we're pushing fluid up and all the way up, and then it closes in deadheads right there, and then we'll actually see our overburden pressure here. And then I like to put around 1,000 or so just to make sure you don't have any leaks or anything like that. Another thing is always keep your lines empty, just in case you do have a break and then it gets into the sample. You don't want it into your lines, into the actual system itself. So right now we don't have anything connected to the in and the outlet of the core holder until we know for sure we don't have any leaks. I put around 4,000 on there. Once you actually get that, you're going to, so you see you have 2 overburden pump, and then close, and then you have drain. So you never really want to drain it. Let's see, you can see down there, drain overburden with pressure on it. You want to release the pressure from the actual pump here, and I'll show you that too. So once we have the desired pressure, let's see, the desired pressure is 4,000, around 4,000 there, and then we know that that's stable. We can go to close here. You don't want to go too far. So now if this is a 3-way valve essentially. So now if I were to accidentally go a little too far, it'll shoot out this drain right here. We don't want that either. So we're gonna lock that in. Pressure's locked. And then what we're gonna do here is we're actually gonna take the pressure off the pump itself. So you're gonna slowly kind of take the pressure off. That just from there to this valve now. So from the pump to this valve, there's no pressure, which is a good thing. So if we wanted to take pressure off the core holder now, we're gonna close this, and then we'll go back to the actual pump itself. So we'll go to the pump. You might get a little bit of a drop here, just because we don't have any pressure there. So now we're gonna actually we'll slowly turn this valve, and you can actually, well, that wasn't very slow, but we're gonna so now all that pressure, that oil, is back into here. And this is why I say always leave this open, because you don't want anything coming back up, just in case if this was heated or it expanded pressure. We don't want it coming back into this actual cell here. So now that that's open, we have no pressure. You can go to vent here, and then you can go to drain here. So now we've got that vented. We'll go to our drain, and then we'll slowly see that back feed into there. With this particular system, the Nano-K, it drains very, very slow.